previous shirim for this week's parasha, which is Parashat Beha'alotecha. From last year, there was a shir called The Listening Ear. From 2 years ago, there was a shir called Automatons, or Automatons, however you pronounce it. And from 3 years ago, there was a shir called Untenable. All of them should be on TorahAnytime.com, your one-stop address for Torah. Nobody has any excuse to say they cannot learn Torah these days when it's available at their fingertips. And if you don't want to go on the internet, which is, of course, is also understandable, then if you have email, you can send me an email. I can send you a link to download or to just get a lot of shirim directly, all in one go. You'll have enough to keep you going for a good few months, if not years. Okay, Parashat Beha'alotecha. So, Baruch Hashem, we've had a very busy week. We're coming now for the last minute preparations for my son's bar mitzvah, B'ezrat Hashem, which will be this Shabbat. This is his parasha, Beha'alotecha. So we're going to start off with Perek Chet. That's 8, pasuk 3. So, Vayas ken Aaron el mul pnei hamenorah he'ela neroteha kasher zivar Adonai et Moshe. Aaron was commanded to light the menorah. This was his special mitzvah. And he did this mitzvah consistently, time after time, with no lacking or no waning of enthusiasm. You know, when a bar mitzvah boy puts on his tefillin for the first time, you know, the tefillin, you can smell the leather, and the tefillin, a little bit hard to put on, and they put it on so lovingly, and they make sure all the straps are equally spaced. So when they put on, they say ve'rastich, and the head tefillin with the mirror, and they're so happy with it. And they spend ages and hours, and not hours, but they spend a lot longer than us adults do when we put on our tefillin. We just yeah, and then as soon as we put them on, not long later we take them off. But there's a certain enthusiasm when you get something new, that naturally a person's enthusiasm will wane. So therefore, one is almost not expected to have the same enthusiasm after initial burst of enthusiasm as you would have in the very beginning. But that was not the case with Aaron. Aaron did this mitzvah consistently, and he had exactly the same enthusiasm towards the end of his life as he did from the first time he lit the menorah. That was Aaron HaKohen. But Rashi tells us in this pasuk I just quoted, it says, I'll translate just the bit I'm concentrating on. Vayas ken Aaron. And Aaron did it. He did so. He was told to do something and he did it. That's nothing unusual. Aaron was told many things and he did them. There was nothing Aaron was told by Hashem to do that he did not do. So what does it mean, and he did so? We expect him to do so. He's Aaron HaKohen. So Rashi tells us something very interesting. It says not only did he do exactly what Hashem had told him to do, but he did not deviate. He did not deviate from exactly what Hashem told him to do. So again, you could ask the question, are we expecting him to deviate? Are we expecting him to do something outside of the box, or something Hashem never commanded him to do? So it still needs a bit of explanation. So one explanation is, just as we've said, that he did the mitzvah in the same way consistently all the days of his life. But there's another explanation, which I heard from Rav Simcha Bunim of Pashischa. He says as follows. He says, it's not that he didn't change what he was doing. Of course, what he was doing was the same. He was doing the same thing every day with the same enthusiasm. That we almost take for granted. We're talking about Aaron. We're not talking about ordinary people. But it's not just that. It's just he himself did not change. What does that mean? It means, sometimes we are promoted, or we get a different responsibility, or we step up the ladder, or we get a certain kavod, and previously we might have been on a certain level of humility. Once we get the promotion or the new job or the new responsibility, and now suddenly we're feeling a bit, puffed up, feeling a bit haughty. And then slowly we start getting changed for the worse. We start feeling, hey, I'm the boss now. Before I was the porter, before I was the hamal, before I was the eved, I was the servant, I was nothing. Now look at me. Obviously people trust me. So you start feeling a bit full of yourself. Not so with Aaron. It says he did not change, he did not deviate. It means before he got the job of lighting the menorah, he was on the level of Aaron HaKohen, humble servant of Hashem. After he got the job, there was not a hint of change in his humility. Exactly the same. No, lording it over everybody else. And that's very, very a poignant lesson we could learn from there. Because no matter what position we have in life, and it's not easy at all. Because when a person becomes a big professor, or a big rabbi, or any type of a big doctor, whatever it is, the first thing you think about is, look what I've achieved. Look, I'm a self-made man. I'm a millionaire. Look, all my investments that I made with my own seichel, they all came off. They all worked well for me. And now you see how much I made myself a millionaire? That is exactly what we are not supposed to do. We're supposed to think, remember that we discussed this a few weeks ago? The true meaning of humility is knowing that whatever Hashem gave you is on loan. You're living on borrowed time. Hashem gives you wealth. You think that wealth is yours to keep forever, regardless? You think you're immune to God giving you another twist of fate, as it were? You think now you've got it, it's going to stay with you forever? I think anyone who's living in this day and age, more than anybody, will realize that this is not the case. When so many large blue chip companies have gone bust, do I have to mention the names? Woolworths, CNA, what about the banks? Coots banks, all these other banks going under, and in America, all these institutions that we thought they're household names. They're going to be there forever and ever and ever. No way. Because Hashem gives you something, there's no guarantee it's going to stay with you. Now what happens if you start thinking in that way? If you start thinking that whatever Hashem gave me is a loan, then you start having hakarat hatov. You start having gratitude to Hashem. You wake up in the morning, you say, Baruch Hashem, I've still got a house, I've still got a wife, I've still got kids, I've still got my eyesight, I can still breathe. Like the bumper sticker in Israel, the bumper sticker that says, Baruch Hashem ani noshem, which means, thank God I'm breathing. People take breathing for granted. I think you take 50 breaths every minute, something like that. You miss a few breaths and you see what color you're going to turn. Chas v'chalila. You miss a few breaths and, God forbid, you'll turn blue. That's it. It just takes a few missed breaths and you're gone. Baruch Hashem. We take breaths every day. Even in our sleep we take breaths. So why aren't we thanking Hashem for this? Everything we have is borrowed. It's not Magia li, I deserve it. A person should never ever think like that. So therefore, Aaron HaKohen, he remained the same person. He was the same humble person before So afterwards, as he was before. Now Rav Avad Yosef Zecher Tzaddik Kadosh V'cha brings another insight. However many times I've seen this Pasha, I never thought of this. It takes a Rav Avadia to think of such a thing. Listen to what he says. He says, it says he did not change. Aaron did not change. He did not deviate. You know what other aspect he could have made a deviation from? Because think, when he was lighting the menorah, where was he going? He was going into the Mishkan. Something happened in the Mishkan. On the day of the dedication of the Mishkan, something happened to Aaron that was not very pleasant, to say the least. I'm talking about Nadav and Avihu, his two sons, who on the day of the greatest joy, should have been the greatest joy for Aaron, for Aaron's wife, for Klal Yisrael, turned into a day that became a day of Avla, a day of Avelut, when his two sons died in front of his own eyes. Now, it says there in the Pasuk, Vayidom Aaron. Aaron became silent. He accepted fully and completely what Hashem had done. There was no questions. And you might think, well, this is cruel. How can he be so heartless? It's nothing to do with being heartless. Of course he was sad inside, but he accepted the Gezerah of Hashem. Now, as if to rub salt in the wounds, now he had to go into the Mishkan every day, into the place where his sons died. Every day go in there. Can you imagine the pain he must have felt? To be in that place and know his sons died. And he saw. It's not like he heard about it. He saw the whole thing. So every day he went in. Every day. Again, he did not change. He did not deviate. He was the same Aaron. He accepted fully. Of course, every father is the same. He feels emotion, he feels that. But to come out and have questions on Hashem, impossible for Aaron. Impossible. It was the furthest thing. That's a Chidush of Rav Avadia. Now let's move on to the next Perek Tet Pasuk Zayin. That's chapter 9, verse 7. Now we've talked about this a few times, but it's good mentioning it here again. Vayomru anashim hahema elav anachnu tameim lenefesh adam lama nigara levilti hakriv et korban Adonai b'moado b'toch b'nei Israel. This is talking about the two men who were tamei mate, who had impurity from a dead body on them. They had contracted this tamei mate, this dead impurity. Now, everyone else at the time was bringing korbanot, bringing sacrifices. But these two people could not bring any sacrifices. They had to sit and watch everything happen in front of them. Because somebody who is tamei, somebody who is impure, cannot bring a sacrifice. It's as simple as that. Now, they reacted in a way that they had a complaint in a way. They had a complaint. They were saying, why should we miss out? The words are lama nigara. How's it translated here? Well, this is a very old English translation. It says, wherefore are we to be kept back? It basically, I'll translate the English into modern day English. It means, why are we the victims of this circumstance? Why? We want to do the mitzvah. Now, you would be excused for thinking, listen, you're not in a position to bring a sacrifice. You are doing a mitzvah already. The reason why you are tamei mate, the reason why you have death impurity on you is because you are handling dead bodies as a mitzvah. Either you are handling the bodies of Nadav and Avihu, the sons of Aaron, as we just mentioned, or the bones of Yosef HaTzadik, which were brought from Egypt to be buried, to be reinterred in Israel. So they were doing a mitzvah. What's the halacha? Misha osek b'mitzvah, patur b'mitzvah. Somebody who's busy with the mitzvah, he does not have to stop doing his mitzvah and do another one. It's not one replaces the other. You should do the mitzvah you're doing, and if the other one cannot wait, then you don't do that mitzvah. So why were they complaining? Listen, you're off the hook. You don't have to do the korbanot. Be happy. You know, just do the mitzvah you were assigned to do. Why are you looking at what you can't do? So the truth is, you're right. They did not have to do the mitzvah of the korbanot, of the sacrifices. They should have just continued what they were doing and nobody would have batted an eyelid. But the problem they were having was not that they didn't accept their situation, because they had no choice. They were assigned to do the task of transporting the dead bodies, and that's what they had to do. Nothing more was expected of them. But they felt, you know we're patur, but we still feel sad. We know we don't have to do, we know we're exempt, but it doesn't prevent us from feeling bad. It doesn't prevent us from feeling that, I wish I had another mitzvah. I wish I could do more. That's what they were feeling. I know I've only got a certain task, and I know I cannot do any more. I'm forbidden for doing any more, but I wish I could do more. A person might be, God forbid, in a wheelchair, and he can't do chesed like that. He can do some chesed. He can't do chesed like other people do. He can't go by himself visiting the sick. He can't go by. It's very difficult for him. There are lots of things he would want to do. Now, does he sit in the wheelchair and say, okay, never mind, I can't do chesed? Yeah, nobody would look down on him for saying, look, I can't do it, what do you want from me? But if he wanted to take that emotion to a higher level, he would say, look, I had no choice. I'm in the wheelchair. I'm incapacitated. Who put me in this wheelchair? The Ribono Shel Olam. God had his own cheshbon, had his own reason for putting me in here. Why? I don't know. I fully accept what Hashem did for me. But I still feel bad. I still feel, I wish I could do more. Now that brings a tremendous nachat to the Borei Olam. It brings tremendous feeling of nachas to Hashem. Hashem loves this. He says, look, I put you in this situation and you still want to do for me? You still want to serve me? That is praiseworthy. That is tremendous. And look what happened to the two people who, as it were, complained. It's not really the right word. They didn't complain. They didn't have an issue. They weren't going on strike. They weren't making a hafgana. They were within their rights to do what they were doing. But they just voiced, they said, we wish we could do better. And Hashem said, you know what? Because you reacted like that, you want to serve me so much, I'm going to make something special for you. I'm going to give you Pesach Sheni. I'm going to wait till you become Tahor. You have 30-day period till you go through your purification process. And then when you're Tahor, you're pure again, you bring your own sacrifices special for me. Oh, they were over the moon. They weren't expecting that. And now not only was it just for them, for all of Klal Yisrael, from that time on, was established the holiday of Pesach Sheni. Such a tremendous thing, because they really wanted to do more. They wanted to serve Hashem even more than they could. What a beautiful lesson we learn from here. But also the flip side of this is that whereas those Jews wanted to do more, what happens if a person wants to do less? Even in a position where what they're doing is sufficient, but they wish they could do less. I'll give you an example. And without explanation, you will not understand what I'm about to tell you. I'll tell you that right now. The Jews went to Har Sinai and they received the Torah. They got 613 mitzvot, and they were told by Hashem, now you have to go to Israel. You're going to go to the promised land, and that's going to be your home, and that's it. Fantastic. So what did they do? They were at Har Sinai, they turned around, they packed up, and they went. Yeah, that sounds good. Nothing wrong with that. Doesn't sound wrong, anything bad at all. They were punished because of that. Yeah? Now, if I don't give you any explanation, you look at me like, what? What are you talking about? Hashem told them to do something. They did what Hashem told them, and they got punished. Let me explain to you what happened. On paper, there was nothing wrong with what they did. Of course they listened to what Hashem told them. But it was the way that they did it. There are two ways that a Jew at Har Sinai could react to the command of turn around and go. Leave the mountain, go to Israel. There's two ways. One way is they could turn around and say, yep, that's all we need to know. The bell has rung in the school. We're out the door. Quick, let's go before Hashem gives us mitzvah 614. 630 is enough. Must speak. Yalla. Hashem says, finish. Yalla, let's go. Quick. Or they could have turned around and say, Hashem told us to go, let's go. But you know what? Chaval, we had such a powerful experience at Har Sinai. We have to go. Do we have to go, Hashem? Of course we have to go. You told us. But we love it here. We will never stay a second more. You told us to go. We're going to go. We're out. Finished. But we feel such an attachment to Har Sinai and the whole experience of Matan Torah that it's chaval al azman. It's chaval that we have to go. They should have felt regret. Not like, when they give the mashal of kids, when the school bell rings at the end of school, 3:45, the school bell rings. Which kid is going to go, I had such a nice day in school. Let me stay for an extra hour. Give me a detention or something. Let me stay in school extra. I love it here so much. No. The kids, they're out the door quicker than you can say something very quick. Who wants to stay in school longer? It's punishment for every child, or most children. Maybe there's some tzaddikim who they really do love school, they do regret. But it's not abnormal for a child to the bell goes and he quickly runs to find his bag and he wants to go out. The Jews left Egypt like naughty school children who were running away from school. If they could go earlier, they would have gone earlier. That's not the way to leave Har Sinai. You don't feel regret. You don't feel... Okay, on one side, mitzad echad, okay, God told you to go, you're going. Yeah, that bit you got right. Yeah, that bit, there's no problem with that. But where's the feeling of, oi, 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 look where I'm leaving? They didn't have that feeling. It's the same with many, many things. A person could be completely 100% right, but because of his attitude, he could get punished. Now I'm going to, this is not in my notes, but I'm going to mention something that's very topical. Something that a lot of people have been talking about. I will not refer to it directly, Misha Yavin, Misha Mavin Yavin. Whoever knows what I'm referring to will know, but I'm not going to mention it directly. There's a lot of talk nowadays, the past few days, about a certain religious institution which they made a decree, and it got out in the press, and of course, the non-Jewish press got hold of it, and they're now vilifying the Jews. They're saying, how could the Jews do this? And now, again, those who know what I'm talking about will know what I'm talking about. And there are a lot of people who've called up, a lot of Jewish people who've called up the radio stations and said, no, this is not indicative of the Jewish way. Nobody does this, and it's an antiquated system, and we shouldn't be judged. Now, I'm not for 1 minute saying, yes, I agree, or no, I don't agree. I do not want to do that. It's not my territory. I don't know enough about it. But one thing that I personally got out of this whole balagan, this whole controversy, and it's caused a terrible Chilul Hashem. One thing that I got out of it is that if you are the person who's calling up the radio station and you're telling a non-Jewish radio presenter and you're telling him, no, those are separate Jews, we don't agree with them, then at the end of the day, what are you doing? You might be right, you might be wrong, but you might be right. But at the end of the day, what are you doing? You're turning your back on your fellow Jew. You're saying, it's him and his silly opinions. Don't you feel bad? You don't feel bad that you're criticizing your brother? Let's assume that what he said was unequivocally, completely wrong. Completely wrong. Still you should feel bad. Of course, he does something wrong. You go, you tell him, look, you did wrong. It's bad what you did. But feel bad that you have to come and feel bad that it's come to this. You don't feel bad that it's come to this. You don't feel a pang of remorse that you have to go and spread the word about your brother and your brothers and what they've decreed, right or wrong, it doesn't matter. I would feel bad if I came and you might think you're doing good. Oh, you're just clearing the situation. There's nothing we can do to clear the situation. There's nothing we can do. What we have to do is in my humble opinion, is not to do nothing, but to deal with it in a different way. At least feel bad that such a thing has come out in the public eye. At least feel bad, not to come and vilify them and this and they're wrong and then. And okay, so let's say they are wrong, but is there no emotion? You're so quick. How do they call it? They call it you shoot from the hip. You're very quick to react, like knee-jerk. Oh, you call up the radio station and start complaining about your fellow Jews. That's your first. You're happy with that now? I'm not happy with that. I'm not happy with that. If they're wrong, I feel sorry for them. Anyway, that's enough. I'm not going to get into any politics or anything like that. It's really not my business. It's really not my job. There are other people who do it way better than me. I'm just very, very small fry. Okay, let's move on. You're probably now all wondering what on earth I'm talking about, especially if you're in America. But anyway, whoever's listening to this for America, don't worry about it. Just, move on. Now, Perek Yud Aleph, Pasuk Tet Zayin, I think. Let's have a look here. Tet Zayin. That's 11:16. Yes. Now, this is, I'll quote the pasuk. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe. There's a very poor light here now. Esfa li shivim ish miziknei Yisrael asher yadata ki hem ziknei ha'am v'shotrav velakachta otam el ol moed v'idyatzvu sham imach. Moses was given a command. He was told, gather 70 elders. Yeah? From this we get the Sanhedrin. So, get sent. Now, what was the qualification for these 70 elders? And I quote now from the Ye Old English Bible, gather unto me 70 men of the elders of Israel, whom thou knowest to be the elders of thy people and officers over them. Yeah, take officers. Why were these men referred to as officers? Was this a qualification? So these 70 Zakanim, they did have a qualification. These were the 70 people who were the officers over the Jewish people, the Avadim, the slaves in Egypt. So you had a workforce, all the Jews, apart from the tribe of Levi, all served under the Shibud of Mitzrayim, the enslavement in Egypt, but they had Jewish taskmasters. Now, the Jewish taskmasters were in charge of the individual groups of people who were doing the work. And it was the job of the taskmasters, the Jewish ones, to ensure that the slaves all did their work. And if the slaves did not come up with their quota, then the blame fell fairly and squarely, at least the Egyptians, as far as the Egyptians were concerned, the blame fell on the taskmasters. So the Egyptians didn't go to the people, they went to the taskmasters. Why has your group of slaves not completed their quota? So they would say to the Egyptians, they would say, look, you haven't given them straw, or you're working them too hard, or some type of excuse. Now what happened when the Egyptians heard that? They don't want any excuses. They don't want to hear any nonsense like that. What do? They took it out on the taskmasters. They beat them, and they hurt them, and they victimized them. And then maybe another time they might have also been pulled up and said, look, why has it's the second time we're telling you. And they again gave excuses, and again they got beaten. And it happened time and time again. These taskmasters were whipped and beaten because they stood up for their fellow Jews. They stood up, they took the big hit. Every time they took their hit for their brothers. Hashem said, I want 70 people to make up my Sanhedrin. What is my qualification? They have to be tzaddikim. They have to have learned Shas 10 times. They have to have given tremendous amounts of tzedakah. No. One qualification. Zekanim, they had to be zekanim, they had to be elders, they had to be well versed. But I want those zekanim, I want the ones who stood up for their brothers. The ones who didn't say, it's their fault, not my fault. The ones who said, you want to beat somebody? You beat me. Don't beat them, you beat me. I'm going to take the big hit for my brothers. Those are the people I want to be my zekanim. Do you hear that? You see what Hashem loves? Hashem loves somebody who stands up for his fellow man. Who says, don't attack him, you attack me first. You become like a human shield. Just like Yosef. I'm just thinking now off the top of my head. Yosef HaTzadik. When Esau came to meet Yaakov, and Yosef stood in front, and he stood in between Esau and his mother. I think it was his mother. He must have been young then, because his mother died when he was about 7. He stood and he said, you want to attack my family? Then you attack me first. He was like the shield. He was a protector. And ultimately he became the protector in Egypt when he became the viceroy. He protected his whole family. He protected the whole world. The whole world owed their existence to one man, Yosef HaTzadik. And by the way, talking about not going to your head, it never went to Yosef's head either. Yosef was the same humble man after he became viceroy than when before he became viceroy. And when he was in prison. He wasn't saying, oh, look at me, everyone looks to me for food. Everyone has to come to me. I'm the distributor of the food. Nobody can eat in the world unless they come to me. He never felt ga'ava. That's how we have to be. So you want to make it in Hashem's eyes. You want to gain favor in Hashem's eyes. Then you will stand up for your brother, no matter what. You will stand in front of him. You will shield him, and he will hide behind you, and he will cling to your coattails. But you will stand firm, and you won't let anybody touch your brother. I'm going to give one last point, and we're going to end off with a story. So, Perek Yud Beit, Pasuk Tedvav. That's 12, verse 15. This Pasuk talks about Miriam, the sister of Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron HaKohen. Now, what happened? Miriam contracted tzara'at. She got leprosy, which is the only word I can use to translate tzara'at. Really, tzara'at means tzara'at. You can't translate it into English. Leprosy is like a physical skin disease. This didn't have any, was not something you can catch. It's something that was individual. It was tailor-made to the person. Yeah, it was because of a spiritual defect. So what happened? Miriam, because she, again, I feel hesitant saying this. She talked about Moshe Rabbeinu. She talked, and again, it was so subtle what she said. She didn't even know, but on her level, she was punished for it. So she talked Lashon Hara about her brother. She got tzara'at, and the whole camp of Israel waited. They were ready to go. They waited for 7 days till she became tahor, and then they carried on. Entire 3 million people all ready to go. They waited a whole week just for her. Now that's a tremendous thing. That's a tremendous tribute to Miriam. But you have to understand in what merit did all of Klal Yisrael wait for Miriam. You know what the merit was? For the merit, you have to go back 80 years. When little baby Moses was put in the tenner, the basket, because all the Jewish babies were going to be killed, she put her brother Moses in a basket, or maybe it was his mother put him in, but she was the one who was waiting. She waited there to see what was happening with Moses, and she saw the daughter of Paro, whose name was Bitya. She came and she took the basket, and we all know the story. So because she waited for Moshe Rabbeinu, now 80 years later, the entire Klal Yisrael waited for her. That was payback. But not just any payback. That was payback big time. Yeah, 3 million people waiting is not nothing. It's not like waiting for 15 minutes. 3 million people waiting for 1 week is different. So now, you've got to ask the question, why now? She had to have the reward for waiting for her brother 80 years later. Give her the reward before then. Why you had to wait for 80 years? Okay, you could say because she needed it. Okay, fine. But give her the reward in another way. Why you had to wait 80 years? Well, there's a couple of answers to this. The Shemen HaTov gives an answer. He says, imagine if she was given the reward there and then. She waited for her brother, the little baby Moses, and then she got the reward. How would you understand this reward? Okay, a person waits with a baby, makes sure the baby's okay, taken care of, fine, you get a reward for looking after a baby. It's a great reward. But you have to understand, who was that baby? That baby was the leader of Klal Yisrael, the bringer of the Torah, we call it don't call our Chumashim Chameshe Chumshei Yisrael. We call it Chameshe Chumshei Torah. We call it Torah Moshe, not Torah Yisrael. Torah Moshe, after Moses, who brought the Torah down from Hashem on Har Sinai. So that was not apparent then when he was a baby. You could say, oh, it was any baby. You could, you get rewarded for any baby. But no, you wait 80 years, you see, look who she saved. And now you see who Moshe Rabbeinu was. Now you see, you know what the reward is going to be? Because not just from a baby, from somebody who did so much in those 80 years. So much. Now you see why she had to have such a great reward. A simple act that was done just maybe, because she wanted to listen to her mother told her to look after the baby. You could give any reason why she did it. She did it from the heart. But at the end of the day, it was, technically we all would have done it. We all, a baby and you would have made sure. But you see the ramification. So what I'm trying to say is the things that we think are very simple and straightforward. You look after a baby, you put a baby in a carriage or a pushchair or a buggy, whatever you want to call it, and you go up the road and you put a baby in the cot at night and you look after the baby. These are all simple acts that anybody would do. But you don't know which baby are you? This baby is a Jew. This is your child, is a Jew. Do you know who this baby is going to become? If you are parents, if you are a Cohen and you have a baby boy and you look after that baby boy, do you ever think that this baby could be serving in the Beit HaMikdash? This baby could be the Kohen Gadol. You don't know. Can you say, no, definitely not. No, not my son. No, he'll be a doctor. He'll be a lawyer. Yeah, you're sure about that? You want to bet money on that? How do you know he's not going to be serving in the Beit HaMikdash? And what about the other side? What about if you insult that little child or the teenager who's a Kohen? How do you know you're not insulting the next Kohen Gadol? You don't know. He's definitely got the makings. He's a Kohen, he's got yichus, he's got pedigree, you can trace, he's a Kohen. You can tell me definitely not? He's definitely not going to be a Kohen serving in the Beit HaMikdash? You want to put that in writing? Now let's extend that a bit further. If you hurt somebody, how do you know what he's going to be? He might be the next chief rabbi. Or you hurt a lady. How do you know this lady's not going to give birth to tzaddikim? Or she herself is going to be like Sora Shnira. Or Lady Jacobovitz, to give the modern example. Or any of these great tzadkaniyot. There's so many. I'll be all night when I talk about the great tzadkaniyot we've seen in our generations or the previous generations. How do you know? You don't know. The answer is, you just do not know. You will never know. But it might happen. You want to take the risk. If you hurt somebody, you want to take the risk. We should never be willing to take the risk. But if you help somebody, you have no idea who you've helped. So a person, when he does a mitzvah, this is what I take out of it. A person does a mitzvah, don't minimize it. Don't say, it's nothing. I give tzedakah one day, so what? I give tzedakah every day. It's for me, it's like routine. Anshe mulumada. I'm just going through the motions. Do you know for sure that tzedakah has not saved your life that day? Well, you have to have Hashem to show you exactly that He saved your life for you to believe that? How do you know Hashem never saved your life and you never even knew about it? You do not know that. Never underestimate the power of a mitzvah, no matter how small. Miriam waited for maybe 15 minutes And that was enough for entire Klal Yisrael to wait for her for 7 days. Just for her kavod. We never know. Now, we talked about insulting people, and you don't know who you've insulted, and you don't know. Now, let me tell you a story, an unbelievable story. This, for me, is just beyond belief. It just shows what people were living in the previous generation. I'm sure there's people like that in our generation as well. We just don't know about them. So the story is told of Rav Yosef Dov Soloveitchik. He was known as the Beis HaLevi. He was the father of Rav Chaim Soloveitchik, the Brisker Rav. So the story is told of Rav Yosef Dov that he was learning Torah with his son. By the way, parenthetically, the whole Brisker dynasty was created not as a way of pushing Torah out to the masses. You know how it started? It started because the father wanted to teach the sons. He made the yeshiva for his sons. And it got bigger. And it included more and more people. But it started at home with his own children. It's an oft-used phrase, but I'll say it again. Charity begins at home. You want to do kiruv? Do kiruv. Just make sure your own family is also mekareved as well. Don't do kiruv for everybody else except for your family. Don't do chesed for the whole world except for your wife or your children. I've seen it happen. Outside of the house, people are the nicest people. They do chesed. It's wonderful. Don't get me wrong. It's brilliant. It's fantastic. Yeah? Why don't you add to that? Why don't you make the chesed in your home as well? And make that your first port of call. Because it's a cheesy phrase. It's an oft-used phrase, but it's so true. Charity does begin at home. Don't look beyond. Start and radiate out. That's how I understand it. Anyway, back to the story. So Rav Yosef Dov Soloveitchik was sitting teaching Torah to his son, Reb Chaim, and it was a very hot day. And so the father of Yosef Dov, he normally wore a long coat, a long rabbinical coat. So he took off his coat. Very, very hot day. I think, okay, he's teaching Torah with his son. Fine. Into the room walked a certain shochet, a certain butcher. And this butcher had an issue, had a problem with Rav Yosef Dov, the father. Because Rav Yosef Dov had judged on a dispute between this butcher and another butcher. Now the butcher who appeared in front of Rav Yosef Dov that day, Rav Yosef Dov had ruled against him. He'd ruled in favor of the other butcher. Now of course, you have to understand that the butcher who had lost the case, when he came in, you would, okay, listen, he was wronged and he felt slighted. But listen to the circumstances. The butcher who Rav Yosef Dov ruled against was actually correct. He should have really ruled in his favor. But that butcher made a very bad mistake because he offered a bribe to Rav Yosef Dov. And Rav Yosef Dov, now you give me a bribe, that's inexcusable, guilty. I rule against you. Now this butcher was hot and angry. Now if you're angry, you come in and maybe you have a discussion and you get a bit hot under the collar and you go away. Not so for this butcher. He came in and in front of the rabbi's son, he berated him, he screamed at him, he shouted at him, you and all the rabbis. Of course, it's not just enough for him to insult Rav Yosef Dov, he had to insult all the rabbanim as well. You rabbis, you caused me so much trouble, and going on and on. As soon as Rav Yosef was shouted at, what do you think he would do? You think we would say, hey, hang on a minute. You're shouting at me? No. Rav Yosef Dov stood up, he took his coat and he put it on as if he was preparing for a mitzvah. And he bowed his head down and he listened to the entire barrage of insults, and he didn't say one word. And of course, now the butcher was hearing, oh, you're not answering back? You're not arguing with me? Oh, and then it caused him to become even more angry. And he was throwing more insults and But Yosef Dov was waiting. And then the butcher finally, he'd taken out all his anger on Rav Yosef Dov Soloveitchik, the Beis HaLevi. And now the butcher was turning to leave. And then Rav Yosef Dov opened his mouth. What do you think he said? You think he said, you finished now? You finished it? No. He said 6 words. Machol lecha, machol lecha, machol lecha. Which means, I forgive you, I forgive you, I forgive you. Now when Rav Yosef Dov Soloveitchik, the Beis HaLevi, tells you, I forgive you, he's not paying lip service. He's not just saying one thing and inside he's thinking, I hate you. He's telling you machol lecha because with his whole neshama, with his whole being, he wholeheartedly forgives. These are not just words like we say, we use words liberally. You're a tzaddik. You call somebody a tzaddik, you don't think he's a tzaddik. You think he's a regular person. Or maybe you don't even like the guy. Tzaddik, we call tzaddik. That's not Rav Yosef Dov Soloveitchik. What he says he means. So now, what happened? All this brother happened in front of his son. So not enough that he was being insulted himself, his son has to watch his own father being humiliated in a horrible, terrible way. And I'll tell you a couple of things, again, parenthetically. I know a rabbi who had the same experience. He was insulted by somebody, and I actually saw, during the course of my association with this rabbi, I saw people talk to him in quite a rough way. People older than me, so it's not for me to tell them off. People who would talk with him in a rough way, and he would never answer them back. Now this rabbi who I knew was once, I never saw this, I heard about this. He was insulted by this person. And it was in public. And that's really not what you want to be doing. You don't want to insult anybody in public. Insulting somebody in public is one of the worst things you can do. Do not do it ever, ever, ever. Yeah? So, by the way, what happens if you insult somebody in public? Ein lo chelik lo maba. You don't have a share in the world to come. You can be the biggest tzaddik. It gets taken away from you. Chick, chack. Yeah? So, highly inadvisable. Anyway, this rabbi that I knew was insulted in public. And what did he do? He didn't even look at the guy in the face. He bowed his head and he took, just like the Beis HaLevi, he took the insult. Not only that, he started beating his chest. Ashamnu, Bagadnu, Gazalnu. He started saying vidui because he knew that this must be a punishment for something I did. So I'm now confessing to Hashem. I'm doing vidui. I'm confessing. I sinned. Ashamnu, Bagadnu. Can you imagine such a level? And this is somebody in our generation. So, okay, without taking anything away from the Beis HaLevi, you can see that there are tzaddikim who live in our generation. Anyway, so the butcher went away. Rav Yosef Dov Soloveitchik forgave the fellow. Now, the next day, this butcher was leading a herd of cows, and there were bulls. And one of the bulls started getting into a fit, and he attacked. And like we say in the Gemara, when an ox gores a human being, he gored this man. He attacked attacked this butcher, and the butcher died as a result. That was the next day. Now you don't have to be. Listen, nobody's saying this happened because of this. We don't know. But it happened the day afterwards. Okay? Now, they told Rav Yosef Dov Soloveitchik what happened to this butcher. And Rav Yosef Dov was absolutely crestfallen. He was totally beside himself. He said, Chas v'chalila, this butcher could have died because of me. Because I might have felt a twinge, a little bit of, you hurt me. And that was enough for him to get a gezerah on him of death. Death decreed against him, bidei shamayim. So he felt responsible. Can you imagine such a thing? Rav Yosef Dov did nothing wrong. He felt, because he possibly he might have felt a little bit of anger, a shemetz, a little mashu, lachluchit of anger, and that's what causes death. Now, he didn't just feel bad for 1 day, 2 days, and then after 1 week, finish, chalas, he didn't remember it. You'd ask him a year later, you remember the butcher? He'd say, what butcher? Chas v'chalila. Listen to what Rav Yosef Dov Soloveitchik did. He was so shaken up, he was so afraid that he could have caused it. He was telling his son, by the way, he told Rav Chaim, he was probably crying in front of his son. He said, but his son said to him, says, Tati, but you forgave him. You said, Machulacha, Machulacha. He said, no, perhaps I wasn't even sincere when I said that. But he said, Father, how could you say such a thing and not be sincere? Of course you were sincere. So, okay, he accepted that to some degree, but he still felt a safek. He felt maybe, what if I was responsible? What if I had a hand in the death of it? So what did he do? He went to the levaya of this butcher. He followed the coffin, so like as if he himself was a family member. He said Kaddish for the fellow. He said Kaddish for the whole 11 months. The whole 11 months for this fellow who insulted him like unbelievably. He said Kaddish for 11 months. And every year on the yard side for this butcher, he would fast. He would do a tanit. Can you believe it? He did a tanit. He said Kaddish, and he learned Mishnayot, Leilu Nishmat, this butcher. That's a tzaddik. Every single chumrah that he could think of for the memory of this butcher, he did. He pulled out all the stops. Can you imagine how many times we've been wronged in our lives and we think, nakama, revenge, how dare he, Look at what we have to aspire to. Can you, and I'm thinking off the top of my head now, can you imagine if this is the way he treated somebody who insulted him? Can you imagine how he treated somebody who loved him? Can you imagine what love came from that tzaddik? He doesn't even, we can't even imagine such a thing. So you see, it's a level. Listen, we're all human beings. We're not on the level. But you know what? If this Rav that I know could do that in our generation, well, it's something we have to aspire to. At least don't feel hatred in your heart. At least get to some level where you can say, you know what? If the Brisker Rav did it, and if this Rav that I'm talking about also did it, maybe I can do it. Maybe I can try. Maybe I can work on myself. I can say, you know what? If I was insulted, or if somebody stole from me, it's because Hashem wanted the money not to be with me. It's because I deserved. In Shamayim, they wanted the insult to come to me. I had some cheshbon in Shamayim. Hashem wanted me to receive that insult. It could be a kapara. You know, you remember the story about the Ger Tzedek, the righteous convert. Well, without going the whole story again, there was a righteous convert who was learning Torah in secret. He'd converted to Judaism, was learning, and then somebody gave him away. Somebody grasped him up to the authority. Somebody snitched on him. Yeah, without going into the story. And they caught him, and they burnt him at the stake. They burnt him. They gave him serefah. Yeah, because they said, look, well, why did you convert from Christianity? Why did you convert to Judaism? What is he doing? They gave him a chance to become Christian again. He said, no way. And he stood by his word. But before he died, you remember what he said? I said this a few weeks ago. He said, I will not go into Shamayim until the fellow who gave me away to the authorities is 100% forgiven. And I will bring him with me into Shamayim. Now that is even more unbelievable than this story, perhaps. You know, how can you understand what type of level? But these are stories that happened. Because if it was whatever reason the Ger Tzedek had to die at the stake, that's Hashem knows that. Nobody can give reason. Nobody can make cheshbonot. God made the cheshbon. And he knew that. He knew that Hashem made the cheshbon, and he knew that unless he said that, unless he forgave the fellow, that God forbid maybe something would have happened to him. So he said those words because he felt kinship with his fellow Jew, even though the Jew did him the worst wrong. But it had to happen min hashamayim. Yiratzon, that all of us, we shouldn't have to be tested like that. We should feel the love for our fellow Jew and for our fellow human beings without having to be tested like that. But let's feel that love and feel it sincerely, in the most sincere way. And if we don't feel it, we should work on ourselves that we do feel it. And when we do feel it, then maybe, just maybe, Hashem will bring us the ultimate present. Because of all our achdut, we act as a people together, working together. Hashem will bring us the greatest gift. And you know what it is? Because I talk about it week upon week upon week upon week. The bringing of Mashiach Tzidkenu, may it happen techev u'yom mamash, v'chein yosov v'amar amen.